sure that was tough. You know, you learn how to shoot this rifle and that rifle, and you know, just go through when I went overseas in such and such a month or a year, even if you say what year it is.
Okay, my name is David Lawton. I'm from Johnstown, New York, and I'm an old World War II veteran. I served in the South Pacific during the World War II. I was with the 32nd Infantry Division. That's a Red Arrow job. I was a sergeant with the Machine Gun Company, and we went in from the Philippines. We went in late day. That was in October of 1944. And from there we went into Luzon, and we chased General Yamashita all over the island. Finally he surrendered in 1945, August.
How about starting from when you went into basic training? Had you graduated from school?
All right. We went to camp up in from there. When I first went in, I was into the Air Force. I took my basic at Shepherd Field, Texas. And from there, I was for the chemical warfare unit. I went to Edgewood Arsenal. I took my training there we went through everything there was for all the different gases. And the one thing they gave us a little on the needle point. I still have the scar here where they put a mustard gas onto it. And when that thing, after 3 weeks, that thing that was almost a half an inch high, that blister onto it. And then from there, I went back to Shepherd Field. Then from there, I was transferred to Portland, Oregon. And I was still in the chemical warfare, and all at once for some reason, World War II, the Germans weren't using the gas anyway. So they dissolved a lot of those, what am I trying to say here?
The units?
Not only the unit, but they were doing away with the chemical warfare, where you had to go through a gas chamber. That's what I was trying. If you had to go into the gas chamber, we had to take the whole base and put it through the gas chamber with, we had to use not only with, oh boy. There was, well, anyway, we ended up with the chlorine gas. And while we was in there, we had to take and loosen the mask up and smell just for a second. It was like a petunia. It was a very pungent smell to it. Then from there, but for some reason, they dissolved the chemical war bit. And from there, they started putting people from the Air Force into the Army, and that's when I got transferred from the Air Force into the Army to go overseas. And I took my basic from there to Oklahoma. I forgot the name of the base, isn't that something? Well, anyway, I took my basic there, and I qualified for expert rifle. And then from there I went and they put us on the boat, we went, our ship, and we went to the South Pacific. We ended up in New Guinea, and from New Guinea we went into the Philippines, and from Lake Day we went into Luzon, and that's where I finally ended up with the 32nd Division. I was still a sergeant, so they made me in the Machine Gun Company. And we seen quite a bit. We chased General Yamashita all over the Luzon, the islands, and he finally surrendered in 45 down in just above Manila. And then from there I went to, with a special force, I volunteered for other duty. So from there I went to Iwo Jima. Then from Iwo Jima I went to Iwo Jima. Then from Iwo Jima I went to Okinawa. And then from Okinawa I ended up in Japan. And after we got in Japan, I was a volunteer for, I had 21 men. We had to liberate all the prisoners of war there was in the island of Japan. We went to Fukuoka, that's where our headquarters was. And then from there, we started going to the coal mines. But in the meantime, we ran into, there was 18 Australian prisoners that was in a steel mill above Nagasaki. And they were telling, they were there when the atomic bomb dropped. And they said that they'd never seen anything like it. It was in 20 minutes from the time it hit to it was gone, everything was gone. They couldn't believe what a thing was. And from there we went, from there we in Fukuoka, and we liberated, we found no Americans whatsoever. But we found a lot of Chinese prisoners, a lot of them. The first coal mine we went to, that guy, I could have shot him. I shouldn't have said that, but I could. He was no good for our human race. All his prisoners, there was less than 700, but they was all dysentery. But the crematory boxes, there was on the end, now I'm going back to the building. It reminded me of a post office, a box. Each individual had its own little box. It was all squared out. They had them all the way up on the side of the building. And from there, they had it down through the middle, and they had to slide in so their heads were showing. And that there was over 2,000 of those crematory boxes. We had to box up on that. At that first coal mine, he was a miserable. He was a trickly of Japanese that didn't care for human race. The next one, he was a little better. And we had the same thing there, but they weren't as bad as the first coal mine. There was some dysentery, but not as much as there was on the first one. But we still had a lot of boxes to box up there. There was over 2,000 in that one. But the third one, that guy, he was an ace in the third coal mine. He was an ace. He took care of his men, every one of them. I don't think there was, with the 1,600 prisoners of war he had in that coal mine, there was less than 700 of those crematory boxes in that building. And they were, and while I was there was one Chinese, he could speak English. I used him for interpreter. And he told us that they weren't going to leave the coal mine. We had to almost threaten them to shoot them right there. They didn't want to leave. We had to take them, we got them out, and we put them on a boat, a ship, and we sent them to China. But they didn't want to go because this guy that I was talking to, the Chinese prisoner of war, he said, we're going to have another war, and he said, we're going back to fight. And I told we had a colonel. He was in charge of us after a while, and he didn't believe it. He said, you don't believe that propaganda stuff. It wasn't even 4 years when Korean War broke out. And I said, if I ever could see that colonel, I would tell him, he better go back to basic. So anyway, it was going back to when we got into the islands. There was a lot of elements besides just chasing the Japanese. You had malaria, which I got. I got that in New Guinea. And on top of that, it rained terrible down there, 6 months a year. Every day it rained. And the big, the leeches, they had a pern, they were perns that was like we have here, but they was 12 to 14 foot high. But all those leeches loved those perns. They were under the leaf. And sometime when you got through walking, you'd sometimes have 12 to 15 of those leeches on your arm. And then from there, it was just a terrible element. One incident, or a couple of real bad incidents that we had, we were traveling with a mortar company all the way through the Luzon. And up in the northern part of Luzon, they had these arch stone bridges. And we had to, they were all zeroed in with them 77 Japanese mountain guns. So we took turns. One time we'd go across the bridge with a machine gun company. Then the next one would be the mortar company to the next bridge. And it seemed like every time that the mortar company got on that bridge, they were clobbered with them. They lost a lot of men with that mountain gun on there. Because what they had, the bridge had a, they were wide. There wasn't very high railings. And they were, they'd had that zeroed so that that shell would hit the edge of that rail at that bridge side. And it just splattered everything. But we were very lucky to every time we got across the bridge, we were very lucky that we didn't get it. But the mortar company just, they got hit every time. And there was a lot of bridges up there. There was them arc bridges. And believe it or not, people wouldn't think this, but whenever one of them bridges, it was on a ravine that would go anywhere from 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet, right straight down on the side of that mountain. Right straight down. There was one place we was up in there that was a river, but it looked like a small stream until we got down. You need a boat to cross it. That's how high up in that mountain it was above Baguio. But we had our elements, and we had one banzai attack while we was up out of Baguio. And that was something too, because they had, when they went on one of them attacks, they had those little boxes, bottles. They was about the size of a Red Cross toothache bottle, and it was raw opium. And they would take that just before they would, you could hear them gathering, and then they go into the sake bit after they had the opium. Then they go on that banzai attack. I remember right after they issued a carbine for the officers, a 30 carbine, and that thing was useless as far as I could see. I know we had one banzai attack, and there was, he was a lieutenant, and he was emptying that gun at them people. There was one Jap, he kept coming on to us, he was fixed bayonet, and I hit him with a 45 and started him back about 20 feet. He knew, boy, we didn't have to worry about him, but that saved that lieutenant because he was coming on to him, because them guns were useless. But anyway, another thing too that I talk about, the Japanese, their tracer bullet was white. But sometimes they go and empty a whole box of ammunition. You've never seen one. With us, we had to, every 7th, we had to have a tracer, and ours was red. And they could spot us, but the ones that they hated the most was the BAR, the Browning automatic rifle. The Japanese hated that guy because he couldn't tell where he was. But with us, with them tracer bullets, they could tell us all. Then on top of that, we worried more about the knee mortars. They would hit and run. them little, they probably, they weren't like, they was about a 37 millimeter type of thing, but they were they could put you right in your hip pocket, they were. But the heck of it, every time you called in artillery, they were probably 4 or 5 miles up in the woods somewhere after they give you a couple rounds. But the BAR men was, they hated, the Japanese hated the BAR men. We lost a lot of them, awful lot of them. At least once a week we couldn't, so it was quite an experience. I was lucky. The only thing I come out of it is I had a hell of a attack of malaria. I ended up in the hospital, in the field hospital, and then, but then I had another one while I was in Japan. And, but they told us when we got back to the States that inside of 3 years it wouldn't bother you no more because the cold weather would kill it. But according to the VA hospital, it doesn't kill it. It just makes it dormant. But anyway, that's what I can cover as far as anything goes.
What do you remember most about the war?
It's hell.
And
Yeah, man.
what would you say your best moment was out of the entire time you were in?
At the tail end, after we got in Japan, after we got through liberating all the prisoners of war, we all got together and we had a Christmas party. And the officers gave it to us, and we had a heck of a good time. They gave us the band, and we had all the beer and the liquor, and it was just, I'm so happy that I was still alive to enjoy it.
Now, did you lose a lot of friends when you were over there?
Oh, yes. A lot of them.
Do you remember their names?
Oh, boy. There were 2 brothers. They were the Jones boys. They were from Ohio. And one brother, but he was about 10 years older than the other one. They were the nicest bunch of guys. Let's see, where they got it on our way to. We had to go up the trail to the San Fernando Valley, and there was an ambush up there, and I don't remember all of them. There was a kid from, he was a BAR man, he was Lawton, he was from Georgia. Then there was another Marsh. There was another kid, Marsh. He didn't last very long with the BAR too. It was getting so, if you got friendly, it didn't last very long. That was the only bad thing about the war. You can make friends, but Jesus, you lose them sometimes faster than you can make friends. It's a hell of an awful.
So you'd spent a lot of time in the jungle chasing these Japanese?
That was. We had, I was trying to think of the trail that we went. That's something. Boy, isn't it funny how a war was taken and close your mind. If it gets real bad, the fight and everything would just close your mind right off.
So a lot of it was so.
There was one, Bell Birdie. That was a terrible. We lost a lot of men at the Bell Birdie. We lost a lot of men going from Manila. up to Baguio, a lot of them too. I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate that I tried to save all my machine gunners. I was very fortunate. I lost a lot of BAR men. I lost a lot of BAR men. But my machine gunners, for some reason, our good Lord was, I guess, was with us. But it was, oh, you're talking about jungles. Oh. And the worst of it was the rain, mud. Sometimes you could be lucky to have an extra pair of shoes, and always carry 2 extra pair of socks, because after you got done walking through the mud, you change take your shoes off and put clean socks on. You had to, because otherwise your feet would start to get a jungle rot to it. Smell that you couldn't, it was terrible.
Did your food and supplies keep up with you when you were in the jungles?
The only food we had was the K rations. We never, I don't remember any time that we had any C rations. The only C ration we got was after we got through fighting the war, but generally on the street when we end up in Japan, that we got all the C rations we wanted. All the while we was over in Japan, which I've over a year there in Japan. And, but back in the islands, all we got was K rations.
When the war was over, well, where were you sent?
When I came back to Fort Lawton, Washington, that's where we ended up, and we was in 3 months of quarantine at Fort Lawton, Washington. Then from there I transferred to Fort Dixon. I got my discharge there. And I went back and came back here to, then came back to Gloversville. And before I went in, I had, right after I came out of school in '42, I hooked up with the Fulton County Silk Mill. They hired me. I was there only about 4 months when they drafted me in for '43. And when I got back my discharge from Fort Dick, the Fulton County Silk Mill, Mr. Rogers came right to the house. He said, "You're going back to work." I said, "Geez, I want a vacation." "You don't get no vacation. You had it." "What do you mean I had it?" "I had a hell of a vacation, I'll tell you." So I went to work. I worked there 45 years to the silk mill.
So he was very excited to have you back to work?
He was very happy, because a lot of the boys that I was in the mill all got killed in Germany.
If there was anything that you would say, what did you miss about that time? Was there anything that you missed about those years that you were in service?
Yeah, the good times. Yeah, about the good time. When everybody, the ones of us, they always went for dancing, beer parties. We didn't see those kind of good times here.
So there were a few good times.
Oh, you better believe.
But few and far between.
Yeah. We had a good. The best time we had was after the war ended, and the Japanese surrendered when we was in Japan liberating prisoners of war. That's when we had the good times. We always had every once a month we got our beer rations, and we had our chance to meet the geisha girls.
How about if you had to classify one particular day, what would you say your longest day was? In terms of maybe your worst day?
The worst day was when we had a banzai attack. I think every one of us, we prayed it was, one thing about them, they would start those, you could hear them before they started, and they were hollering out and everything. They always waited to just be halfway between the twilight and the break of dawn, right in that, where you knew something was moving, but you couldn't see what it was. And they always come, but they were screaming, so you knew they were coming on you. And once they were hopped up, once they were, you could, you'd have to cut them in two with a machine gun.
They wouldn't stop for anything.
Nothing would stop. They were so hopped up. Oh, they were nuts. They were nuts people. Why would anybody? Well, I suppose each nationality, each race of people has their own prerogative way of living. And to me, I'm glad I'm American, because God bless them. Boy, I would never, under any circumstances, would ever be in another country. Nothing. Even in Australia or any of those places. No way. No, it was just war is hell. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody comes out a winner. They think they do just because we won a war. We aren't the winners, same as they are. But the Japanese lost more men than we did. So what was it? Right after all the surrender and everything, we put more money into that Japanese country to rebuild it. So, and here our own people were starving to death and everything else, and rations and all that. And now they were feeding the very people that we were fighting.
Did you develop some good friendships with some of your comrades?
Never. We could. You'd like to. You'd like to if you could. You always wanted a buddy. You find somebody to, but you never could get close to any of them. It was just a war way of, you never could, even though we wanted to. It was too bad the way things turned out. A lot of people that they wanted to be friends, you'd be here today and they'd be gone tomorrow.
Did you lose any friends from Johnstown, Gloversville?
I never run any of the people over there that was from Fulton County. But I did Stan of Rivenburg, he got killed in Germany. The Armstrong boys got killed. Both of them got killed over there. Lou Riley, he was a prisoner of war in Germany. He passed away. Another good friend was Sam Passerell. I knew him and his family. I knew the whole family. He got killed in Saipan. They were all, you couldn't, you wanted to, but for some reason, where it was human nature to try to get in and be friends, I don't know. Where the good Lord probably took this and that and the other thing, but you never know. You never know. It's just one of those elements that you had to live with. It was too bad. I always think a lot of them, they're gone. You wonder how their family is. I kept contact for a little while with the one, Lawton milk, his name was. I tried to keep, lost track. For some reason, the sister, he had a sister. She just stopped writing. But the brother, he had a brother, he was with, a lot of milk. He was with, Nashville, making all the recordings for all the big artists. Lawton milk was. He had his own studio and everything. He wrote me a couple of times, and that stopped too. And over the years, I've always gone, when I've traveled to Florida, always go down through there to see if, never could find them. Never could find any of them. No. Well, life goes on. You can't stop living, even though the wars. I just envy these boys over there in Iraq. I know what they're going through. We never had, I think the desert is just as bad as going through a jungle. You never know with the, over there they got them, what they call a camel flea, and they bite worse than a bedbug. So anyway, that's the way it goes. So other than that, anything else?
I think we're all set.
Okay.